Welcome to Cast Dice, the podcast that explores the great big wild world of tabletop gaming that exists today. It's been said once or twice, mainly on this podcast, that we're in the middle of a gaming renaissance. There are just too many good games that we can spend our hobby time and our hobby dollars on, and it can lead to a serious case of not knowing what to play next. And I guess that's the purpose of this podcast. It's to dig into the games that my guests and I enjoy playing. It's to talk about big industry events and talk to the people who create these games. Now, over the years, I have asked for requests for podcast topics, and there have been a few consistencies across the years of things that people want me to talk about. Obviously, bolt action is the most requested topic for this show. People always want me to come back. People want the Ghost Army to come back, but of course that's bolt action adjacent. But there's always other game systems that pop up from time to time. And a lot of those we've covered on the show in the past. But there's been a couple of topics that I've just embarrassingly never gotten to. And today we are going to hit one of those topics. Now, many of you have heard about one-page rules, and we will talk more about the company in a second. But I have had an unbelievable number of requests, particularly in the last 6 months, by people who want me to talk about the game Grimdark Future. Now, you might think, oh, you mean 40K. No, I don't. I mean Grimdark Future by one-page rules. And that's a conversation I've had about a dozen times in the last week when posting pictures in preparation for a local one-page rule Grimdark Future event. It is its own game system. And we are going to talk more about that in a second if you are not familiar with it. However, what really got me going for this was seeing that a local game club, one that I was actually not familiar with and wanted to be familiar with, they're close to my house, was running a one-page rules Grimdark Future event. And it was a perfect alignment of the planets, and that I had some old armies that I wanted to put together, and we'll talk about that more in a second. But to bring this long-winded introduction, in for a landing, let me introduce my guests. We have the two gentlemen that actually ran the event that I just played in, the committee, the co-TOs, from the Warpling Club. We have Alec and Lucas. Gentlemen, welcome to Cast Dice.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Brad.
Now, I've got 1,000 questions, but you guys are from the Warpling Club, and I will throw interchangeably to both of you, but feel free to throw between yourselves as well. Alec, I'll start with you because you are literally next to me in this video call. What got you interested in one-page rules, specifically because the Warplings have traditionally been a Games Workshop heavy club, predominantly Warhammer 40K, if I understand that correctly?
So what got me originally interested in one-page rules was the simplicity of play. 9th edition has been very rules heavy. That is 40K 9th edition. And the updates and grand tournaments have been coming thick and fast. So it's been difficult to keep up with the game itself. So that's been basically a bit of burnout for me. And then on my journey, I suppose your listeners might be familiar with some skirmish games as well, such as Kill Team and Warcry.
Oh, yeah.
Really fell in love with Warcry in particular. Now that's a very slimmed down tabletop game where you're simply only, say, rolling one set of dice for an activation. And I thought, wow, this is just so much fun and easier to play. And then I'm looking back at the laborious task that it is playing 40K. And I thought to myself, there's got to be a better way to do it. And because there's no original thought in the world, I'm like, probably somebody else has come up with the idea on the internet. And then searching and actually talking to people in the Warhammer competitive subreddit, somebody mentioned one-page rules and had a look and pretty much immediately fell in love. Being able to play an activations-based game, simplified, standardized keywords, things like that. Just being able to play and use my models just in an easy way, and getting back to those first print.
I think we have temporarily lost our guest. Lucas, same question. How did you find one-page rules? I mean, it sounds like Alec was looking for it, but how did you find it yourself?
Well, Alec was like the one that introduced it to me, actually. I used to go to Warplings quite regularly, and then life happened. And one day I met this tall, handsome man, and he had this weird game system that was like, okay, one-page rules, sure, why not? Because at that time, I've also kind of starting to weed myself off. Ninth edition as well, and I was actually playing more Apocalypse, the really big scale.
Mm-hmm.
But playing that at the smaller point level, so the size of the game would be about the equivalent of like maybe 3,000-4,000 points, but with a different system, just in search of that streamlined experience, because I don't have time. Like I don't want to be doing homework anymore. Like I'm well past high school. I just want to play my
Exactly.
game.
Now, I'm going to quote Alec here because he said something brilliant on the weekend and it's stuck in my craw. Now, when looking at games like Warhammer 40,000, we know that you need to be familiar with your army's rules. And the army books are big and they're beautiful and they're filled with texts. And there's all kinds of words and keywords and special rules for each and every unit in that army. That's kind of the Warhammer model. It's always been that way, and it's gotten progressively bulkier over time, although it probably evened out an edition or two ago. But there's still a lot to know for your own army. Throw in everyone else's armies, particularly if you are going to play at some sort of event, friendly, casual, cutthroat, whatever. You need to know a lot of rules just to play the game beyond the basic rules. Now, what Alex said and stuck with me is something that I really like about Bolt Action. It is One-Page Rules Grimdark Future is a game that uses a lot of keywords. It uses a lot of generic rules that match everyone. And how it rearranges the numbers and those keywords is how each race has its own fluff. All of those races do feel different, but the resulting game is really easy to pick up and play. It means that you don't have to spend years memorizing your books and everyone else's books. Instead of focusing on that, when you go to play the game, it's a very tactical experience because you're focusing on what you're doing on the table more than, oh, wait, what does that unit do? And it makes for a very fun strategic gaming experience. Alec, I know I used about 1,000 words when you used about 2 sentences, but am I summing up your feelings on that?
Yeah, and I think there's a little bit more depth to there as well. It's like not only just remembering what units can do in 40k, but there's always the potential for gotcha moments with things like stratagems as well. So you really need to like dig into the depth of your opponent's books to understand, or be playing them regularly. Another really strong part of one-page rules is the Army Forge app, which I'm sure we'll talk about more later. But you can just click on the special rule and it will give you a drop down instead of having to flick through a book, or even things like Battle Scribe are somewhat laborious. Like it's now standard in practically every tournament, or like even just playing amongst friends, that you've got Warpedia open for 40k, whereas one-page rules, you don't need that. You can have the entire army list on a play display in their free web app, and so it's just so much more convenient. And then in regards to like the tactical play itself, because it's alternating activations like Bolt Action, it's not you're planning your move and your opponent goes and sees what's going on at other tables and they're disengaged. It's more similar play style to something like chess.
Yeah. It's the old 40K. I used to remember playing competitively. There was a guy that I played. Oh God, what was on the forums? He was Black Knight. I'm trying to remember. Lee Carpenter, maybe. Anyway, he famously would play very competitively, but he would also do okay, I'm going to go for a cigarette. You move and do your thing, and I'll be right back. And then he would disappear, and you would move everything. He's like, I trust you. It's fine. And then you just sit there and wait. And then he'd come back and you'd play the rest of the turn. This is not a game where you can do that. No bathroom breaks here. It is a very immersive game because you're constantly interacting with your opponent, and it makes for a really fun gaming experience. Lucas, do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. If you remember the film's Incredibles,
Mm-hmm.
the villains in that, he says, like, he has this line that says, like, when everybody's super, nobody is. And I think
Exactly.
in relations to 40K, it's like, yeah, you have all these stratagems and flavors and special rules, but the net result is that a lot of that just gets canceled out.
Yeah.
So why go through all that? And, of course, the answer is to maybe sell more books. Or, I mean, look, an argument I've heard, and I think it's valid, is that some people just have that one army that they just absolutely love and cherish, and they're going to be playing it for decades. And sure, they're going to want layers upon layers upon layers of rules to really flesh out the feel of that army. And
Yep.
absolutely respect that. That is absolutely not going to go away. But for the rest of us who, a bit more casual about like this sort of thing,
Mm-hmm.
we're not. I don't want to be penalized for not having the time to give that amount of attention to my army. And I also want to be able to jump around different armies too.
Exactly. And what's really exciting about this game is, I know, Alec, you mentioned the website, but as you're looking at the armies that Lucas is talking about, they have on their website a free version of every army available in the game. Now, the basic rules and the more advanced rules are free. Now, there are the most advanced rules that cost, I believe, $7.
But I warn you, at that point, it is no longer one-page rules. It's like maybe a dozen pages of rules, but
Exactly.
not the 250 pages of rules.
Exactly. And exactly right. It's like 15 pages double-sided. But it's cleanly written. It's well written. And before you think, oh, this is just some strange fan rewrite of the rules. Yeah, it started that way. But over time, it's got a huge community that keeps growing. You get a free access to all the rules regardless, plus the army building, not like an army list builder. You can build your own army list access tools if you're a member of the Patreon. Now, to give you an idea of the size of the community for this game, the Patreon has, from what I understand, close to 100,000 subscribers a month. This is a game that has a community that sends their feedback back. And because it isn't a game company that's trying to sell you new versions of the game, they're trying to balance the lists as they go. And so there are updates. They're currently beta testing all of the army lists. And in the betas, they say, are far more balanced than the original lists. And then they're going to evolve them again, tightening it down, making it fun, making it fair. But all of the army lists are free. And you get an army list for every army that exists in 40K, plus a bunch of other ones that don't exist. I'm looking at you, space lizards, space ratmen, space jackal people, and assorted other shenanigans in there. But what's really cool is there are entries in those armies for things that don't exist in 40K anymore. So you can actually go back in time and bring your old 40K armies out. What was that guy in Monty Python? Bring out your dead. Well, that's what I did. I brought out my Death Guard. And my Death Guard, the last time I really worked on those was like 11 years ago. And to have them on the table again was really exciting. So, but my Death Guard army doesn't look anything like what you would consider a current Death Guard army because it's like 4 editions old. But I was able to still put it on the table and have a wonderful time playing with it. It's just really exciting that there are so many opportunities to put what you have on the tabletop. And I know people have been messaging me because I've been mentioning, I've got these Star Wars Legion armies. I don't know what game to play with it because I don't really want to play Star Wars Legion. This is a fantastic game for that. And as you guys said, I don't remember, it may have been Lucas said a second ago, something along the lines of, I can't remember exactly what it was, but just opening it up and looking at what was possible it was instantly engaging. And for me, as second I looked at the website and started looking and figuring out how the army listing worked, I was hooked. Actually, it may have been Alec, but damn, like it's so good. And I don't just lightly say that. You guys know if I'm talking on the show, I'm typically into something, but I have now played 7 games of this, and I want to play more now. I walked out of these gentlemen's event after 3 games in one day, and that night I wanted to play another game. And I can't tell you the last time in how many years of gaming that's happened. So this is a fun game. Now, another thing that makes this game really good is that it's a short game. So you have to be focused. It's almost like the first couple of turns of maneuvering and sort of chaff in a game that takes up a lot of time before you get into the nuts and bolts of gaming. Doesn't exist in this game. Alec, can you explain why that is?
Yeah, no worries. I was just going to quickly say as well,
Sorry.
Star Wars Legion, you mean your human defense force and your rebel guerrilla armies.
Yes.
Because one-page rules is completely model agnostic, and as long as like the stats somewhat resemble what you're putting on the board, away you go. So yeah, you can have those old armies come in and play as well. So yeah, having the games be a bit quicker because you've got the alternating activations, you can actually get away with having a smaller army on both sides. So like your listeners may be aware that 40k, for example, runs with 2,000 points, which is quite a large army. And so the reason they need those 2,000 points is because of the nature of I go, you go, you need to be able to take that turn of taking damage and stuff like that. Whereas one-page rules, because it's that alternating activations, you're both pretty much always on the same footing as long as the terrain's good and it's not just playing on planet bowling ball. And because the games are alternating activations, they can be smaller, and you're doing so much less rolling and so much less thinking about which stratagems to do, and you're just moving the units. It ends up being a lot more engaging and shorter game, where you're still getting the same value out of it. You're doing, like, the boards look somewhat similar, but it's just sped up. So we were able to play 3 games for the tournament on the Saturday in a very comfortable time. We were having games finish in some cases under an hour, which was great.
And they weren't just those games where we always see those tournament games, right, where they're over in 20 minutes, half an hour. That the one-sided blowouts. These weren't that. It was people playing out a full game. And it was taking an hour and a half. Some of the playtest games, Dave Hunsdale, a good friend who was on the last episode, we were looking at board games. He came over and we ran through some practice games for this event. And yes, he did play with me at this event. And we had the really interesting experience twice of setting up to play and then realizing that we finished our game in half the time that we were planning on it and getting a second game in. I mean, when was the last time that happened? I play a lot of games and it never goes short. It always goes long. Lucas, is that your experience as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I have been, so I work a lot. I'm a social worker. I work with people with disabilities. I work with young people. I have young people who are, they love wargaming, but, it's very intimidating for them. And, I could take one-page rule. I can introduce it to a 16-year-old boy, teach him the game in like 15 minutes and finish a 1,500 point game in like within an hour. And he's, keen for more. Like that, it's such a valuable tool for me in my line of work.
And it really does line up with the ethos that we like to talk about on this show, which is easy to pick up. And I don't want to say hard to master, but there's a lot of tactical depth in there. The more I play, the more I see and the more I want to see. It's a lot of fun. But every game I've played has been a nail biter in one way or another. And that's wonderful. I think it speaks volumes about the balance of the armies. Because I played a lot of different races with my stuff now. And it really does speak volumes about how the game operates in that it's only 4 turns instead of the usual 6 that we're used to. The boards are slightly smaller than what we're used to because of that, to tighten it up. but also the game is a little vicious at times in that you can take some hits and have a lot of stuff go. So in 4 turns, you have some stuff left on the table, but you would have about as much of your army as you probably expect after 6 turns. But again, you are really just getting down into the, ooh, do I move there? I have a limited amount of time. You really do need to focus what you're doing. And yeah, it just makes for a really tight tactical, I don't know, experience. Now, I do want to talk about one-page rules a lot more, and there will be more on future episodes. And yes, we will be talking about it more as we go. And if you are interested in following along with what we're talking about, I know it's probably about 20 minutes too late for that, but please go to One Page Rules in Google and you will find One Page Rules. Then go to Grimdark Future. Now, they make Grimdark Future Firefight, which is like a Kill Team-esque game, much simpler than Kill Team. They do a Age of Sigmar type of game, Age of Sigmar skirmish type of game, which is almost like Warcry, except I hate to say it, I think Warcry might be even more streamlined. Then you have a rank and flank game, a spaceship game, all kinds of games. But we're only going to be talking about Grimdark Future for this. Before we move on to the actual event, though, have either of you experimented with any of the other one-page rule sets at this point? Or is this, are we starting with one and moving our way into other directions?
I've played quite a bit of fantasy and and one game of the rank and file.
Mhm.
And the beauty of the system is that you know how to play one, you know how to play them all, because mechanically they're basically the same, just different keywords, slightly different. Like the rank and file is probably the most different because you've got like angles and facings and all that to worry about. But the Age of Sigma equivalent, Age of Fantasy, it's if you can play Grimdark Futures, you can pick up Fantasy Army and off you go. Like
Brilliant.
it might even be possible to play a fantasy game versus against a Grimdark Future army. Wouldn't recommend it, but it's possible.
I was going to say there's a lot of shooting in the 40K version. So
There's a lot of shooting.
yeah, there may end up being a painful experience.
Mm.
Alec, have you had a chance to dabble as well?
Yeah, I've played a little bit of the Age of Fantasy regiments. I'm not actually the expert on it. Natalie at our club, Warplings, she's very keen to play with people, and they've been growing their community there about it. So yeah, it's been very popular. There's definitely been nights where we've had more people playing Age of Fantasy than we've had playing Age of Sigmar. In terms of the skirmish games, I haven't actually really touched them because I gotta say, I've been talking a bit of smack to Games Workshop tonight, but Warcry in particular is an excellently made game, and so I haven't really felt the need to transfer over. So yeah, Games Workshop, lift your game.
Oh, wow. I thought you were going to say something along the lines of, with a game that's as streamlined and tactical and fun that is using, like Grimdark Future, where you're still playing an army size game. It is a smaller army than, as you said, as you would see in a lot of 40K games. But you're still having that tight tactical experience. For me, I keep almost looking at the firefight rules and then going, nah, this actually what I want out of a skirmish game experience, I'm actually getting out of Grimdark Future as a small scale, tight, tactical army experience, but still has the granularity almost a skirmish game without being deep. I like it. Anyway.
Yeah, just really quick on that. So the tournament that we'll be talking about, that was 2,500 points of one-page rules. And so that's around equivalent of 1,000 points of Warhammer 40K. As we've discussed, 1,000 points of Warhammer 40K, not super balanced because you need to have that amount of army. Trying to play the equivalent of 2,000 points of 40K with one-page rules, that's where it can actually get a little bit wonky because of the amount of activations that you've got. So you've actually got different sweet spots for the different games.
True. And I mean, even games like Bolts Action gets a little wacky once you have too many activations in the game. It just makes the order die mechanic get a little skewy and or take a really long time. Well, let's talk about your event. This was held at the Warplings this last weekend, and I don't think I'm going to do the talk up quite as well as you did, Alec. Can you please do the explanation of the background of this event like you did on Saturday?
Yeah, sure. This was the Battle of Shemadia. That was Lucas's idea, which is an excellent choice of planet to do battle on. The warlord Jabadon was after one of his master's prized possessions that fell out of his pocket on the planet. His master was Boris. And so we had our armies come in and battle over intel nodes to find out where the object was dropped. And then the next mission, they were scanning around, trying to find where the object was dropped. And then in the final mission, they were battling over where they had found it as the planet was literally coming apart because they were having too much fun. I mean, battling to the death. There we go.
Yes, exactly right. No, nothing resembles anything else we've read in the fluff ever for any other game system.
Absolutely not.
At all.
The prized possession was a six-sided cube that could decide fate.
Doesn't sound like anything I've got hundreds of behind me, but yeah.
Absolutely not.
Lucas, how many guys did you guys have for this event? Because, I mean, spoilers, this is kind of a big event for one-page rules in general and for, a young and upcoming community.
Oh, young. Oh, that's really flattering. We had 30 players, which was full house. Like we could not accommodate any more than that, comfortably. So we were really thrilled. Like, we've been advertising for, a few months, and the numbers, we had like 6, 7 sitting on 10 for a while. But we were quietly confident that, as we got closer to the event, people will sign up. And yeah, sure enough. I think the last person to sign up was just a few days before the event, I think, and then he went on to win it. So yeah,
I literally taught him how to play on the Tuesday before the event. Because we had made friends from me teaching him how to play Warhammer 40k. And yeah, it seems like some of that tactical knowledge carried over, and he did quite well.
Now, you guys, I mean, as you say, 30 players is a lot. It was a one-day event, 30 players, 3 games. And we will talk a little bit about the missions in a minute, but it looked, as a player and having looked around during the paint judging time, is that you guys had a really nice spread of armies. It wasn't like there was 25 Space Marine armies and 5 of everything else. It looked like there was a nice spread across the board. Is that actually the case, or was that just my observation?
I think that's pretty accurate. Like, as the lists were coming in, because we asked people to submit their list beforehand to make sure it was all, tournament legal, and we had one player submitted, a 40k list, not knowing exactly what we were doing. So we wanted to avoid that. And yeah, as the lists were coming in, it was yes, like you say, a really nice spread. Although if I had to say it, I think Robot Legion, I think we had like 4 or 5 armies out of the 30. Lots of chaos, lots of plague disciples. But yeah, like it was so great to be at a tournament where it wasn't just all power armors everywhere.
Yeah, exactly, right?
People brought the armies they wanted to play.
Yes, not the army they felt like they had to play to follow some sort of meta. Like, there is no meta. There's armies of all types. We had knights, we had really swarmy armies, we had elite armies, and they all did really well. Like, when we say that somebody won it, like, it was by like the slimmest of margin. Like, we had such a hard time actually figuring out who actually won the top 3 places.
That's right, because you guys actually had to backtrack and do some math on strength of schedule because it was such a tight field.
Absolutely, like, it was so much harder than I thought it was, and I'm a filmmaker. I only got an arts degree. Like, I'm useless in this, so I have to do a shout out to Lap, our resident lawyer, game expert. Like, he was the one that led that effort, and yeah, I'm so glad that we could declare a winner. But yeah, it was the slimmest of margins, and I think next time we do an event, we would certainly think about having maybe secondary missions or some other ways for people to earn more points, just to avoid that at the very end.
And for those who remember back to when we were saying there are the whole $7 version of the rules that you can buy. By the way, you don't have to subscribe to the Patreon. I have not subscribed to the One Page Rules Patreon. I got the One Page Rules Grimdark Future rules from, I believe, Wargame Vault. They do sell them on there. And yes, $7. And in there are secondary objectives. There are additional ways to do that. So if you're thinking, oh, this game doesn't have that sort of granularity, it does. We were just using the more basic rules for this event, which begs the question, how do you think the basic rules, the quote unquote free rules, worked as a standalone system that you guys TO'd an event for? Do you think there are elements in the $7 version of the rules that you think are necessary to bring in or might be fun to bring in? Lucas, you want to start since you were continuing your thought?
Sure. Necessary? No. Fun? Yes, definitely. Like in the $7 version, you'd have more rules about terrain. You'd have more rules about you have the equivalent of stratagems, which I think is really interesting. And I think for me, that's the sweet spot where you can play a few little tricks, which every army has access to. So you don't have the situation where one army stratagem is like so much better than the others. Now,
exactly.
Could you possibly do some super deadly combo with that? Maybe. We don't know. Like we need, I think, in these, months after the tournament, we're probably going to test that out and find out. And when we can answer those questions, then we'll start planning the next event. But yeah, absolutely. The core rules on its own, perfectly fine, perfectly fun. And it's a game because it's so simple, with the keywords and all that, like it's quite simple to also make up your own custom rules to, adjust a few things. Like for us in the tournament, we had these lot of like line of sight issues and questions that, we did a house rule for, and, we asked the community, hey, what do you feel about this? And we applied it at the tournament. And I think overall, like, I think it was quite seamless. Like, I think it worked quite well, and, people were pretty happy.
Yeah, they seem to be. I mean, I was watching a lot of games between my games, and everyone was having a blast. There wasn't any ugly rules questions, at least not that I saw. And it was a really, nice casual feeling. People were pushing things around, having fun. And I think part of that was a distinct lack of gotcha moments that really helped field that. Alex, same question to you. Do you think that you would want or need to add anything from the additional rules? And or do you agree with that assessment of how having a nice balanced game system helped to really, I mean, you guys have a nice casual game club feel. I understand from talking to people, I'd never been there before, but it's a friendly club to start with. But did the game add to that?
Oh, well, yes. I reckon I'm a big fan of the KISS mentality of keep it simple, stupid. So just having those core free rules that you can play and just go on. And then we decided to, as Lucas said, make some custom basic missions that would be varied throughout the tournament. So you couldn't just simply tech into one type of army. And so one of the things about 40K is that like you need to have a lot of that knowledge to be able to play properly. And so I've been working really hard at the club over the last couple of years of introducing a lot of new players, giving them that like easy first game where we're not even talking about stratagems and secondary objectives and stuff like that. Just like, again, that KISS mentality, just to get them around it. And so like I've seen like how they go and like how long it takes to build up that understanding of the game as they continue and play some more of the competitive players and get, well, quite frankly, crushed. Whereas one page rules, we don't really have that. And I think real quick, another real good aspect of one page rules is everything's done on a point calculator system. So your 2,500 points is equivalent to somebody else's 2,500 points. In other game systems, like you can say something's overpowered, underpowered, especially with stratagem interactions and stuff like that. With one-page rules, they cut all of that out. And so a lot of things that would not be viable, or a lot of models that wouldn't be viable in other gaming systems is suddenly on this, not flat, but on this curve of average. So we got to see a lot of variation in the armies that we brought.
Yeah.
Like a few people had smaller armies with bigger units and flyers. Other people brought like a whole like mass, like we had some like mass guard action as well. It's almost been this liberating feeling of it doesn't matter what you bring, it's how you play it. I think I've gone a bit off topic from your original question. So
That is a talking point, ladies and gentlemen. You jumped in early. I like where you're going with that, sir. As I was going through the army list to build my Death Guard, nothing jumped out at me as a bad choice. Nothing jumped out at me as a super optimized, awesome choice either. Now, there were some things that I went, oh yeah, I need to have the deadly keyword, for example, in case my opponent has some big, scary Griblies or vehicles. But, I can pretty much take what I want. And I know I sent in my list and Lucas looked at it and said, you might need some more deadly in there. And then I didn't actually turn in any more deadly because I was kind of under the pump to get my dreadnought painted. And weirdly, though I didn't have as much quote unquote deadly as a lot of the people I played, I didn't feel under gunned at any particular point in the event. Now, albeit I didn't play anyone who had like 62 tanks. However, I did play a lot of people who had a lot of big Griblies. And as you say, it was really nice to see a really nice variety of troops. There were a couple of other quote unquote Death Guard, Plague Marine, Plague Disciples lists there because that's what I was running. And they were very different from mine. And everyone seemed to be having a really good time and doing well with the stuff that they had, even though we were all running the same thing. There wasn't one choice of army. There wasn't one list for each army. Which was just wonderful to see.
There was a little bit of work behind the scenes with keeping everything competitive as well. Like I said before, we had different we had different missions. So some were progressive objectives, some were scan each of the quadrant, and you actually need to use a squad unit to do that. And the other one was King of the Hill, but only scoring on the last turn. But also what we did between missions was rearrange, or in this case, keeping it simple, is just removing some of the terrain. So we started off with this big piece of obscuring terrain in the middle of the battlefield, so shooting armies were a little bit disadvantaged. And then
just to be clear, from a player's perspective, I think it should be said that the terrain matched on every single table. Now,
yes,
it matched, but it didn't match in that it was all a different theme. There were desert tables, there were Forge World tables, there were all kinds, but the footprint of every table matched. But as you said, you changed it between games so that everyone got a different gaming experience each time. Sorry, continue.
Yes, so that's correct. And so by the last game, Shemadia was blown up to the point where that big piece of middle obscuring terrain was completely off the board, and that's actually where we put our final objective. So that kind of varying and forcing having squads for scanning in mission 2, and the switching between progressive objectives and just like an end game objective really meant that you couldn't bring a single list that was going to be dominant in every single mission. So you really had to bring a real take all comers list and just play it as best you could.
I couldn't agree more. I thought that was a really nice touch, especially the going from missions where to take an objective, you counted models, to varying that to having missions where you counted the number of units to see who, contested / held each objective at the end of the game. It made for, as you say, for different types of listing. Embarrassingly, because I was kind of in a hurry trying to get my list done, I didn't actually read the missions particularly closely. We played, Dave and I play tested the second and third mission before coming to the event, just to get our head around the rules and the missions. And, hey, the rules packs out, we'll play these missions. But we didn't play the first one. So in the first round, I deployed and thought I was great and lined up against Robin, and we were setting up and we were going, and she jumped all of her, Eldar out and grabbed the objectives. And I went, cool, I'll blow you off those. And then all of a sudden she was taking a lot of points at the end of the first turn. And I went, didn't realize that that's how this mission worked. Do I feel dumb now? But it made for a really tight game that I had to then, claw my way back. But, she said she had intentionally built the army for that mission, knowing that she might be, later a little bit more disadvantaged, but going for that fast grab, hold, and, try and keep their opponent off. And I was just like, I guess I'll just lumber up the board and try and survive this. But again, it was a fun game. And at no point did I feel like I was out of it completely, even though I'd misread the mission and totally misdeployed. And it was a really cool gaming experience. So yeah. Note to self, be the guy. Like, I'm always the guy who says, read the player pack. Thought I didn't read the first mission. Oh, well.
Good to hear you had a good time, Brad.
I did. I had a wonderful time. It was really good. Well, let's also talk about, so we hit the missions, we've hit the scenarios, as far as the armies and how many different types there were. Did you have any takeaways as TOs that you weren't expecting? Albeit you've never run a game system or an event for this system before. And I know that having run a lot of different games, events for different games over the years, that sometimes different mechanics or different elements of game systems or communities can be surprising. Did you find anything surprising with this? Lucas, I'll start with you.
I guess there were a few mechanics that we wanted to look out for. We were aircrafts, for example. Like, we weren't sure how powerful they would be because they had a lot of rules that made them very hard to shoot down. So we kept out an eye for that. I think something that blindsided us possibly was the spawning mechanics. There are certain units can spawn little baby units. Like, we had the Robot Legion spider equivalent that just kept pumping out scarabs. Or we had like Tyranids that could pump out spores, and they were quite tough to deal with. Like, the Robot Legion player said that maybe if you had two of these, it might have been broken. Not entirely sure, because we like, those armies didn't end up topping the chart or anything like that. So hard to say, but that was an impression that maybe we should look into this. Which I think is great, which I think was a really good sign of a really healthy game system where there wasn't a clear dominant, broken mechanic combo that people could just exploit. Like, everything did seem to balance out pretty well. Like, even the aircrafts, aircrafts kind of capture objectives, and they can only move in one direction. So yeah, I think it's pretty damn good.
Alec?
Oh, just more of a general comment was running a tournament. It's a real team effort. We had Irish, Lap, Natalie, Chris, Lucas, and myself, and a few others all pitching in to help. So like we couldn't have done it just us two on our own. And then the other one is continuously reaching out and keeping players in the loop, and like reminding and having chats with them again to really help build up that community. Because like the kind of my personal goal as TO for this tournament was to really have this real blossoming moment for one page rules. Like, my hope was everybody went home with a few more play partners for future games. So having it be not so much a focus on the competitive side on it, but more of a focus on, I want people to go away wanting to play more with the people that they played with and the people they didn't get a chance to play with because they made friends.
Absolutely. And that begs the question, will there be a next time? I know that you guys were talking about things at the end of the event. Are you excited to run another one of these for Grimdark Future? Are you excited to possibly run an event for another one-page rules game system, or was this a fun one and done? Now I'm going back to my main squeeze. Alec, I'll start with you, and then we'll jump to Lucas.
I, th- I think it would be an absolute disservice after such a successful tournament to just pack it up and move on. No. One page rules is definitely my first and my love at this point. Barely play 40k anymore, so hopefully maybe later in the year we put another tournament together, and I can see it just being that little bit more technical now. Now that we've got this. Player base that's like been to a tournament, so we can have some more interesting missions, and people can go back and think about the next army they want to bring, and maybe upping the points as well. We found that 3,000 points is actually a real sweet spot for one-page rules. So that's my disposition. What about yourself, Lucas?
Absolutely 3,000 points. No brainer there. The only question is, do we go the advanced rules, or do we just have secondary objectives? Definitely, I'm leaning towards having the advanced rules. Like, they're not that hard. They're not. I think they just add that nice extra level of tactical decision making. Like, then you have your Overwatch equivalent. You have your double charge. Double fighting mechanics. Like, things that are, I think, interesting tactical decisions to be made.
Yeah.
But look, having said that, we need to test it. Like, let's try it out in our communities, and see how it feels, see what people think. And because we do this to grow the community. Like, we don't do this for fame or money or anything like that. Like, we purely do this because we want people to play this game.
Exactly, right? Now, a mechanic that Dave and I were talking a lot about before the event, just to continue with what you guys were saying a second ago, was we were wondering about ambush. Now, the way ambush works in this, it's like deep striking you would expect from other game systems, where you can place a unit more than 9 inches from an opposing unit, and that's at the start of the turn. And then over the turn, they get to do their thing when it's their turn, when you choose to activate them. Now, that can be particularly powerful given that in this game, you charge 12 inches. So you can dump an assault unit 10 inches from something. And yes, you have to wait until you activate the unit. But if you're going first, there's a chance you'll get to do something before anyone can react to them coming onto the table. And getting assaulted like that can feel bad, especially if you have a lot of them. Now, I full disclosure, I did bring the Death Guard because I really wanted to take this army and play with it, because I really hadn't finished it. It gave me an excuse to finish it. But I really wanted to bring my old Eyeballs of Tzeentch out, my old Tzeentch Demon army. But what stopped me, besides wanting to put the Death Guard on the table, was more to the point, I didn't want to be the guy that showed up with an army that started with nothing on the table, and then I put down things where I wanted. And I was worried that the ambush rule could have been abusive. Now, I played several players that had, significant ambushing armies. And yes, it is a powerful mechanic, but the way things are pointed and the way the game works, it was surprisingly not oppressive at all. And now I'm kind of just want to put my Tzeentch Demon Eyeball army on the table and give it a go. I was really, really happy with that. And I did play Maddie in the middle game, who had like 6 Terminators tooled out for combat, with a crazy Sorcerer Lord, again, tooled out for combat, who then teleported behind my army and charged. And every part of me went, oh God, not in the face. And, yeah, it didn't feel great, but also it wasn't bad, if that makes sense. Yeah, it was really nice to see that. And as you say, this isn't, I mean, there are people that run events for fame and fortune, but I mean, this is a game system that costs $7 to buy, that is really community driven. And it is wonderful to see 2 gentlemen like yourself running an event that supports and builds that community, because that really is the focus of this game. Now, have you guys done a lot of looking at one-page rule Grimdark Future events in other cities, other countries? Because this is, from what I understand, one of the largest Grimdark Future events in the world.
It's
I
our, oh,
um
yep.
I reached out. I noticed that on the Grimdark um, Facebook page, there was talk of another tournament in the UK, and so I did reach out to them, and they were very happy to respond. They sent us their player packs, and they had their own custom rules and things, and they had 12 players, 12 or 16, like somewhere around there,
Yeah.
and that was the only other tournament I could find. So I do believe that we are at this point in time, at this very could be a very short moment in time, that we are the largest OPR community in the world, and it feels great to be able to say that. Yeah, it's a very
Yeah.
like a lot of hard work. Alec reaches out to so many people, and myself as well. Trying to pick up, introduce this to as many people as we can. Um, and yeah, like we hope it keeps growing. Like we're gonna outgrow the venue. I think we need to think about how we're gonna deal with that. But that's a good problem to have.
Exactly. Right. I hate it when you have too many players who want to play, in your events, because
Yeah,
they're having fun.
yeah, they're having fun. Like I mean, we may have to consider maybe doing a doubles tournament. Maybe I don't know. This is like, we need to have a proper debrief. Like the actual tournament was only like, is it 2 days ago?
Yeah, 2 days
Like
ago.
2 days ago. Like we still haven't actually had a private debrief about it amongst ourselves, amongst the community, about what we'd like to do next time. Although I did sort of put a post out just to sort of get a gauge of what people are wanting for next time. And yeah, there's definitely an appetite for more Grimdark Futures. There's definitely an appetite for the larger game. Unclear yet whether everybody wants to do the advanced rules, but we'll see in time. We'll see how it shakes out.
All right. Yeah, man. Alec, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, like as far as I'm aware, this is the biggest one-page rules tournament that's ever been run. So yeah, I'm real stoked that it's blown up here in Melbourne. But yeah, a lot of reaching out to players that I've played and introduced 40k to in the past, that have then decided that the rule system isn't for them, and so then they've got their models collecting dust on the shelf, and then reaching back out to them and, hey, we've got this. It's a lot more lightweight. I think you'll find it a lot more fun. And then we had people playing in the tournament that I haven't seen in the club in 6 months or a year, having fun with their models again without any of the molasses or like build up that comes with other gaming systems. And so that's been a huge success as well.
I mean, I hadn't played a 40k game other than a one-off of Rogue Trader during the break between lockdowns in 2020 in 11 years. And I, speaking to Robin in round one, she was the same way. And the opponent I had in round 3, who came second, oh God,
Matthew
Matt.
with his Battle Sisters.
Yes, the nuns with all the guns.
Nuns with all the guns. I'm so proud of him. We were so stressed out because he loved his sisters. He built
Yeah.
a list, and in the practice sessions leading up to the tournament, he just got clobbered all the
Did he?
time. Like it actually started making me feel like, oh my god, maybe some armies aren't balanced. And then he came out with that combo, and yeah, he came second. Like he did so well.
Yeah.
He
Oh,
learned how
I
to play
know.
his army.
I drew him
Exactly.
last round, but I thought I was fully pantsed for the entirety of that game. I was going, oh God, oh God, oh God, so many guns. And my units were just shrinking. It was like ice in the rain, just watching it. It's like, oh God, please survive, please survive, please survive. But yeah, I assure you that army works.
Yeah. Like, because on paper, right, you've got units hitting on 4s in a game where
Yeah.
most units are hitting on 3s. Like on paper, it looks terrible. Like all your weapons are short range. Sure, you got bodies, but you're paying for them.
Yeah.
They're not as cheap as like guardsmen. So hard to know what they were going to do. But he made them work.
He did.
And
He
real
really
quick,
did. It was, but he hadn't played 40k in years either.
Yep.
He'd been playing. He'd jumped to Horus Heresy. So again, it was just so many people I talked to were like, "Yeah, I used to play 40k, and I'm back for this." And it gave people the opportunity to bust their toys out of the cupboard and have a good time again, which was just awesome to see. Well,
Yeah, I was
gentlemen,
gonna
I want to
say-
quickly jump ahead and talk about the army composition because there was a little bit of tweaking of the rules. You guys didn't change the rules of the game so much, but you did take some of the. There is an additional document that is used for this game system um, that is the quote unquote competitive rules that helps to balance out a few things if you're going to play in an event. And you used a number of those rules and you added some of your own rules as well. Just to start with, the initial document you put out said that you must have at least 3 units of infantry. You can't have any more than 5 heroes. You cannot have more than 3 copies of the same units. Now, one of the neat mechanics in this game is you can buy a unit and double size it. You buy basically 2 of the same thing and combine them. Those only count as 1. So for my Plague Marine army, I actually had 5-man groups, but I combined them to be a 10-man group, a 10-man group, and a 5-man group, and that followed your max copy of 3 units. You couldn't have a unit that was more than 833 points, which did make me think that I could squeeze a Bloodthirster in there at one point. Mixed armies, and that's the thing in this game. You can take dual armies in one force, but you must have 1,500 points from a primary faction. Now, there were other things that came out along the way. Let me ask, I'll start with you, Alec, this time. Why choose these rules? And what were some of the additional rules that you implemented later? And did you put those in because of things you were seeing? Or was it just playtesting?
Yeah, I think it was a bit of playtesting, and full disclosure here, like I reckon you can probably brick or break this game in one way or another.
Mm.
And so some of the competitive rules that you just said are from the competitive rules document. And the one big one that we put in was having at least 3 squad units. We wanted people to bring armies. We didn't want people just to bring toys on their own. But that's totally fine. You can play the game like that, but for the tournament, we did want a specific theme of like these are proper army feeling armies that you're playing with, but also fighting against. So that was kind of a way to smooth it out, and then the missions on top of that, adding things like ruins with the terrain, so you can have units move through it, but single model units can't. And then the addition of obscuring terrain as well, which was essentially copy pasted from 40k, meaning that we could be a lot more liberal with the terrain, so it wasn't as like there wasn't that much of an ability to be that guy because of these rules that we put in to kind of smooth out the rough edges of the system. And so I think personally they were a great success. What do you think, Lucas?
Yeah, absolutely. Like the fact that there wasn't any army type that dominated, the fact that everybody felt like there weren't any nasty gotcha moments or nasty rules lawyering going on. And like, yeah, I think it was a complete success. And it still had variety. Like, I mean, we had a player who played Imperial Knights. Like, he could still make that list work. So yeah, no, I think I mean a lot of those rules that you read out that we read that came straight from the 1-page rules guidelines. Like, we didn't make up that stuff. Like, that was just what they recommended.
Yeah, it made listing interesting because as an old 40k player, a lot of my armies, like my Dark Eldar witch cult, is entirely witches, and went, oh no, I can't run that because I can only run 3 squads of 10 witches and the raiders that go in them, and I'll have to paint another half an army to this, which is interesting given how small the armies are for this anyway. And then my Plague Marines, I had nothing but Plague Marines painted and kind of a Land Raider. And so I was like, oh, quick, I'll paint a Spawn and a Dreadnought and, maybe a character model, and we'll go from there. Oh, I can throw some zombies in that I painted like a million years ago. What else can I squeeze in? And So the 3-unit rule what did force me to put more diversity in my army, and I am happy it was there. At first I thought, God, that's frustrating. Like as someone in bolt action who likes to run a themed list, running a themed list of just one thing is encouraged in that system. And it just made me think of, how different game systems are different, if that makes sense. But I absolutely understand why you would want variety, so that people wouldn't just take maybe one unit and then brick someone in the face with it 1,000 times. But I think this game has less of those units. But I think Alex's right. I think if you really tried, you could probably break this. But it is nice that a lot of thought's gone into balancing it. Would you guys, am I speaking out of class here, or do you guys agree with that?
No, absolutely agree. Lucas?
Yeah, of course. Like this tournament, I wouldn't go as far as to say that it teetotaled itself, but certainly like I think we had a lot less of that intervention from our end as organizers than I think a 40K tournament would. Like I think people just seem to, sort themselves out quite well. And like the lack of like not too many layers of rules, like not too many weird interactions that can happen. Like, we had a few things with like, transports and things coming out of transport or transport blowing up, but they're very much like on the edge. And of course, any complex system game you can break. Like you can break any game. You can break chess, I think, really, if you really wanted to. But
I think someone did recently.
Yeah, well, something. Yeah. So I think this is fine. I think this is like really a step up from, 40K.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I do want to say something here that might be a little strange for people who regularly listen to the show. I mean, the introduction of this show should have told you that this is a podcast where we talk about a ton of games. But I know, having been a rabid player of 40K for, God, a huge chunk of my gaming career, I know that it's really easy to get on that treadmill and to stay on it because it's perpetuating. It's designed that way. I worked in the sales department. I know there's new releases 52 weeks of the year on purpose. It's to keep people interested and to keep them looking and buying and to keep them engaged with how the game works. I'm not saying that cynically. I'm saying that is literally how it's designed. And because of that, and because of the way the game is constantly updated, it is a very engaging game system that will keep you looking at it and not looking elsewhere, because there's constantly new shinies, because there's constant updates that change the way you play the game. So if have you stumbled on this podcast and haven't listened to anything else, and you're new to this and you just saw the header, first of all, welcome. Second of all, if you are a 40K player, I'm not saying that you should stop playing 40K and should play this immediately. That is definitely not where I'm going. But I think that if you are only looking at one game system and you think, oh, this isn't 40K, I'm not going to have a go at this. As someone who played 40K forever, I highly recommend you pick this up and give it a go. If you only play one other game system, I still recommend you pick this up and have a go. I think an unbelievable amount of thought has gone into it. It is a modern, streamlined game system. Yes, we will be going into more of the mechanics in the future. I'll probably have our good buddy Dave Hunsdale back on, who also helped me with some of the questions for tonight. Thanks, Dave. Love your work. But I do not lightly say that this is a game that has me so excited about wargaming again. I can't tell you. Now, does that mean I'm going to stop playing bolt action? Of course not. Bolt action's the main squeeze that I talked about earlier. However, there are lots of great games, and it would be remiss for it to not talk about this one. And my big regret is that I didn't pick it up earlier. So many of you messaged the page and told me to get into this. And I said, yeah, I'll get to it. Let me just say, you were right. I should have done it earlier. Gentlemen, anything you would like to add? I know our time is coming to a close. Before we plug your club, any final thoughts about running this event, one-page rules, or Grimdark Future in particular? Anything at all? Lucas, I'll throw to you. What?
Yeah. You know what? Like the question I want everyone to ask is, do you own Warhammer, or does Warhammer own you? Like, when you talk about that treadmill, like when you talk about that, like I really want people to think critically about that, because it is so easy to get swept up and to just take whatever it is they're throwing out because you have to, because that's what all your friends are doing. And I think it's really powerful and healthy for the hobby, that there is option, there is choice, there
Mhm.
are other things out there. And look, if I can mention the from the D&D world, because I'm also a role player as well. Like D&D had that whole thing with OGL. The
Mhm.
community only had leverage because Wizards of the Coast know that there are options they could turn to.
Yeah.
Like with Warhammer, it is so much harder because you've invested thousands of dollars and years of your life to
Mhm.
your armies. You may feel like you are dependent on their rule set, but when you have one-page rules around, you're not. Like, there are other options, and if only you ever played once and it's free, you should definitely give it a go.
Amen. I could not have said that better myself, although that was a savage intro to that. I was like, oh God. Oh. Alec, what are your thoughts?
Well, with savage intros. In 40k, a gateway to being one of the best players is having an encyclopedia of knowledge of the systems of the game, including how your army works and how all your opponent armies works, and very finicky um, interactions. In one-page rules, it's not about remembering all your rules and exactly how to play your army. It's more about how good of a general you actually are, making tactical decisions, kind of drawing closer to something like chess, where you're
Mhm.
playing your opponent in that real-time alternating activations, trying to outwit and outthink and outplay as you're both actively engaging on the field. So that's my pitch for one-page rules. That, and also it's free and it'll take you half the time to play, and you'll have a better understanding of how to play it than 40k within one game.
Exactly. I mean, I can't underestimate or I can't underemphasize the fact that Dave and I sat down to play this, and by turn 2 or 3, and we had no one coaching us. We did have our friend Nick, who was sitting with the rules, and so the three of us were kind of talking through it as we went. But by turn 2 or 3, we had it down pat. And then, yes, there were things we were looking up. Yes, we had some questions, and yeah, we had a couple debates here and there, and we messaged the Facebook page a couple times with some questions about things. But it was so easy to pick up, but it made for such a tactical game, and it felt right. And it it felt very bolt actiony in that it is the alternating activations. It is a streamlined system as far as the number of dice you're rolling, and it's very interactive with you and your opponent. It just made for a really nice gaming experience, and one that I would encourage other people to have a go. Even if you don't have anyone who quote unquote plays it already, all you need is a friend who is also interested in and curious about things, and you can pick it up pretty quickly as well. And the online community for this game is unbelievably good. So if you go to any number of Facebook pages, there's a lot of them. I highly recommend the OPR Grimdark Future / Grimdark Future Firefight page. I have asked a couple questions on there. They've been answered quickly and, more to the point, nicely. It is so beginner friendly and so welcoming. It is such a wonderful way to jump into a community. Now, I do want to talk quickly about the Warpling Club, because the venue is great. The people are great. Talk to us about who are the Warplings and how can people find you?
Well, it's a church, so follow the light of you know no Facebook, like Warplings, and we're based in Flemington. We're close to the station there. Yeah, jump online, chat to us, and especially if now that the club has been quite successful, it's filling up. Like we're getting full houses like very often. So you actually now we're at a point now where we need to actually book tables ahead, which is great, but also could make things a bit difficult. So definitely get online first, chat to us first. But otherwise, yes, please come along. Like we play lots of different games. We encourage lots of different games. There are some incredibly passionate people behind it who are, working on terrains, 3D printing, amazing things, working on tables. Like, the terrain that we had on display, like 15 tables worth, like that was all the club terrain.
And it was really nice looking.
Really nice looking, and it was made by the community. Like they would have painting nights where people would just take out some club terrains and we all sit around the table, drink beer, and just paint away. And because we could see the fruit of our labor. Like it's really really wonderful to have that community feeling.
It is, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's Warplings in brackets, Wargaming and Dumplings on Facebook. And also, while we're doing pluggables, I would absolutely want to plug the One Page Rules Discord as well. You can get your rules questions answered in real time, as we did on the day of the tournament for a few rules clarifications. And also, if you are interested, absolutely consider subscribing to their Patreon, especially if you're a 3D printer, because you'll be able to get the STLs that they release every month. And also they release mission packs every month. So if you want to vary up your game, you can subscribe and download them. So yeah, lots of good stuff in the Patreon. There's 2 tiers to it. I don't have a 3D printer, but I am a subscriber because I'd be a hypocrite if I wasn't.
But it's 100,000 people support this game. Now, how many times do we talk about on this podcast? It's an up and coming game, or it's about to be released, and you go to a Facebook page and you're like, oh yeah, there's like 500 people here. They're really passionate, but they're all over the world. I think this game is just growing and growing and growing. And the number of Patreon followers is largely indicative of where it's going. So the hype train is real, boys and girls. Check it out. And it's not an expensive Patreon either, from what I understand.
It's either $7 or $14.
Yeah, exactly. And if you want the 3D print files, the $14 one gets you access to countless armies, and they're nice. Like they're really nice.
They put a lot of effort into.
I was looking at someone's who was 3D printed from that. A friend was printing things and sending me pictures, and I was going, I cannot believe that is from that. Oh, we'll have to do another 3D printing episode coming up soon just to talk about the phenomenon. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. And gentlemen, thank you so much for running such a fun event. I had a blast. Dave also had a blast. We will be back. Please run more. And if I can get out of work at a reasonable point at some time in my life, I will be back to play games at your regular club night. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that takes us to the end. Thank you very much for listening. As always, if you have requests for this episode, for future episodes like this episode was, please go to the Cast Dice Facebook page, CASTDICE. If you message the page, you're guaranteed a response by me. Hi. My time is a little gross at the moment. I'm starting a new job, and it has just been a little busy. I have been a little slow on replying to a few messages, and I know the release day for episodes has varied a little bit. I'm still trying to keep to one a week, but please bear with me as we make the transitions. I know there was an audio issue on not the last episode, the episode before. With a new job comes a new laptop, and there are technological issues that we're working through. Those should be ironed out. Thank you to the people who did message the page. I do appreciate it. If you find another mistake, God, please no. Please message the page and let me know. I do always strive for the best quality. But I think that takes us to what our buddy Casey always says. When you are playing the games that we know and love, I hope that your dice roll hot. I hope that your beverages are cold. But more than that, we at Cast Dice hope that you are having fun. Stay safe out there, guys. Good night.